Okay, I did my presentation on the 6 syllable types. I felt like this has been one of the most useful things of my children that my children have used in their multisensory group. So I felt like by sharing it with the teachers at my school, I focused toward grades K through 3, that would be beneficial to all students if they would use the syllable types daily. My goals for the presentation were so that the teachers could develop confidence when teaching the syllable types. They're mostly all aware of the syllable types, but they don't just keep reinforcing them over and over and over again like several of our students need. Another goal was just to enhance the teacher's existing syllable type knowledge and teaching skills. And then I would like to help them create lessons explicitly teaching syllable types. So then at first I talked to them about what are syllable types and where do they come from. In doing my research, I found that they were regularized by Samuel Webster, who was the writer of Webster Dictionary, and he had a lot to do with the development of the syllable types. Also, the syllable types justifies the division of syllables. If students understand the different syllables and the syllable types, they're able to break the words down later in syllable division and decode those bigger words. So there are, like I said, there are 6 types used in the English spelling, and by understanding syllable types, it would also help students with their spelling. Some teachers may ask, well, why should I teach syllable types? Why should I just keep going over them and help students just master those? Well, it enables readers to decode unfamiliar words. There are some readers that they need some type of tool to be able to figure out a word they're just not familiar with. It also assists readers in developing accuracy and fluency. And that is our main goal when we're trying to develop comprehension. We have to get our accuracy and fluency up so we can comprehend more. It also improves spelling, and it prepares, like I said, the reader for the syllable division. And most of all, it is a research-based strategy. How do we teach syllable types? Well, we have to introduce them, explain, practice, and master. All students, or most students, need these steps. They need them to be introduced, explained, and they need to have plenty of practice to be able to master it. The first syllable type we talked about is the short vowel. The vowel in the closed syllable is short. We talked about how common they were, how common the syllable type is. We use this syllable type the most when reading. And we also talked about a breve. Most of the time we don't tell students, that this is a breve, or we just talk about it being a short vowel. But for our visual learners, it helps to code that with a breve to remind us that it's short. So then, after we talked about the different about the closed syllable, we practiced. I put a word on the board and allowed them to code that word from their seat, and then we went over the answer. We did this for several of the words. And I just used a short vowel from every vowel. I did A, E, I, O, and U. So we could practice coding each short vowel. And then I just talked about, how it is important for the kids' sake, not to introduce all of those at once. But this was just our practice. The next syllable type was the open accented syllable. decided at this point not to do the unaccented syllable. I didn't want to overwhelm the teachers. I wanted to just get the basics and somewhere where they could get started. So we talked about how the open accented syllable is long, and we code it with the macron, and talked about what the macron looks like. We talked about what accent is. I gave them our definition of accent. We open our mouth a little wider. We say that we hold the sound a little longer. We say the sound a little louder. So I talked about how it is important, that students understand what an accent is. And then, like I said, we talked about the macron and how it could be useful for students to use the macron to code to help them understand that they're going to read that vowel as a long vowel. And then we practice. Again, these are just words that I had chosen for the teachers and not really for the students' use. And we just did one syllable words because syllable division would be a whole nother lesson that we'd have to go into at a later date. The third syllable type is the vowel team. We talked about our pair. We talked about what a digraph is, and we talked about what diphthongs are. How we code a vowel digraph. We just underline a digraph, and we talked about some different digraphs, that they know of. And then the diphthongs, we arc them. So we talked about the different diphthongs and arcing them. And again, that gives our students a visual way of determining how they need to read that. That's why we code. And then we practice. The fourth syllable type is the vowel consonant E. We talked about the vowel is long and the E is silent. We also talked about how we code that long vowel with the macron because it's long, but then we cross out that final E because it's silent. And then we practice. Again, I tried to use the different vowels just for the teacher purposes. The A, consonant E, and then some different ones, such as the O consonant E, U consonant E. Syllable 5 is the final stable syllable. We talked about what a final stable syllable is, and I used our definition of a final stable syllable. I reviewed what an accent is, and then I just I showed them some of my cards that have different final stable syllables, just so they can be aware of what we were looking for in a final stable syllable. Talked about how we code the final stable syllables and accent that syllable before it, and this syllable type has really helped some of my students be able to code some of the 2 or more syllable words because they can automatically find that final stable syllable and bracket it off. It's been useful for my students. And then we practiced. Like I said, I'd already reviewed that BLE was a final stable syllable. And these final stable syllables, it was the consonant LE syllables. And then I gave examples of how to code them. We also discussed that there are other types of final stable syllables that it's not only the consonant LE syllable, and we kind of went over some of those examples, but this was just an easy starting point to get the brain thinking in the syllable types. The last syllable type was the vowel R, or the R-controlled vowel, and we went over different R-controlled vowels that we could think of, and then we talked about how we arc the vowel combination, and that just lets us know that those two come together, and it's an unusual sound. And I put some examples on the board, and we talked about how that R makes the vowel before it make a different sound, and how they go together. And then we practice. And then when I finished that last syllable type, I gave each teacher a worksheet that I created for them, and I created closed syllable word worksheets, and at the top it has the definition of what a closed syllable word is, and then the directions. And I did that for short I, short A's, short E's, short O, short U's. I did it for the different final stable syllables, open accented syllables, R-control syllables. Yeah. I also did it for every syllable type, and I did for the R-control syllables, I did like coding UR words, coding IR words, coding ER words. So I gave them something to start with, and I also helped them create a lesson where we went over the different ways that you could teach it using multisensory. How to introduce a syllable, or how to introduce the syllable type, how to introduce the word. We use like repeat after me, listen for the word, tell me what you hear that's the same. I taught them how we could feel to see if it's voiced or unvoiced. We looked in the mirror to see what our mouth was doing. And then I put the words on the board, and they told me what they see that's alike. And then we coded some words together. And so I gave them a master lesson plan of how they can present each one of the syllable types. And then again, like my next presentation would go from, once the teachers feel like they've mastered the syllable types, I would like to go teach them the syllable division rules. I provided them with a syllable type chart, and encourage them to hang it in the classroom and to uncover the syllable types as they have presented them, and review that daily, more than once a day. Kids need to see the different syllable types so they can use that to decode unfamiliar words. Then, after I went over that, I put this graphic organizer on the board. We reviewed what each syllable type was, and then I presented them with little baggies with with words with all different syllable types. Each teacher had a baggie with a syllable type, and I gave them an opportunity. They had this also on their desk or on their table, and they placed the words under each syllable type. And then after that, we checked it and talked about it. So, in conclusion, we talked about that by teaching syllable types to students, it gives them a strategy for chunking larger, longer words into manageable parts. If they can take these words apart, they feel more confident when trying to decode them. By giving them familiarity of the syllable types helps the students to read longer words accurately and fluently, and it also helps with solving spelling problems. And my sources, Miss Nancy Kaufman and her Written Language Intervention for Students and Dyslexia syllable type lecture, I also used a strategy for reading multisyllabic words from Teaching Exceptional Children, and the 6 syllable types from readingrockets.org.